Ladies and gentlemen, we will be starting off this session with our first presentation, and that will be about the data quality for safety learning culture. But please allow me to tell you more about the speaker that will be joining us on stage. Now, he holds a PhD in risk management and focuses his academic work on the impact of the vessel's socio-economic environment on safety as well as the environment. Now, today he'll be talking about data quality for safety learning culture. Please join me in warmly welcoming the head of Maritime Safety and Environmental Administration from World Maritime University, Professor Raphael Baumler. Professor Baumler, welcome.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for MPA for this occasion to be able to speak with you. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. So I will make a small introduction about the problem that we have, how data is important for us to improve things, but also what is the situation today and how we can eventually improve through a project that we've done in the recent past. So first of all, I would just like to introduce very shortly what is WMU, very shortly, and I think the best person to introduce WMU is this gentleman, the Secretary General of the IMO, which is explaining that it has been a big step in his career to join WMU, and if anybody is interested in it, we're more welcome to open our doors. So now I will go to my presentation. Basically, I will talk about the necessity to have data in order to have a good feedback, and eventually what I will call the feed-forward loops, and in order to have the improvement process. I will talk after about the current issues related to data collection at sea and the problem that we can have in the quality of data and what we get. And after I will talk about Safe Mode, which is a project that we have been running in the past 2 years with aviation partners. And it has been a very interesting cooperation between maritime sector and aviation partners to develop new ideas, new possibilities for the maritime sector. So I would just go through very basics, a little bit of maybe theoretical or unusual way of presenting things, but I just want to make sure that we are speaking the same thing when we are talking about data, about feedback, feed-forward. So you see this very small diagram on top right. I think for anybody who has a basic engineering background, it's super easy to understand. So we have a system. In order to have the system reaching what we are expecting, the output, basically we will collect information from the result of the system and use it as a feedback in order to orientate better the system. So basically we collect some set of data from the system itself, what it's producing, and here this data has been pre-selected, so we know exactly what we are looking for, and we will use it in order to feed our system. So for example, a set of data can be selected, can be the incidents, accidents, and how these incidents, accidents will support the adjustment of the system conduct. We can consider also some low intensity signals, such as near misses, and how all these near misses can also allow some adjustment of the system in order to have a better output, because we want to reach the output that we decided at the beginning. So why do we need this feedback? We need this feedback basically for information gathering in order to improve. That's quite simple. And we need also this feedback, and it's another very important reason, to learn. We collect information in order to learn what's happening, to learn the status of the system itself, but also to analyze through this learning and modify eventually and improve the operation of complex systems. Ultimate objective of any feedback is basically improvement. Improvement, triggering action, and improve the system functioning in order, of course, to reach the expected safety level, so which is our output. The idea is to have this long-term improvement, and this is why having a good quality feedback will definitely feed the long-term improvement of a system. It's a very powerful way of thinking any system conduct. However, we can say that there are some limitations. Some of the limitations, and the first one would be very much this kind of feedback mechanism is based on collecting data which have been first selected, so you know approximately what you are looking for, and this data may be a little bit limited in its significance in terms of safety, and it's also reactive, so you take the data after. knowing that you have an accident and you are going to improve after the accident, it's probably better being a little bit more proactive. And this is what we're going to see a little bit afterwards. So you have the idea that you are taking information after, that also you are taking information of pre-selected data. Are you sure that the data set that you have been considered as relevant at a certain moment is still relevant for yourself in order to improve? Another issue is basically you don't very much question the big box that you have in the middle, what I call the system. You don't very much consider the system itself, its functioning, and how, over time, the functioning of the system, of a complex system, is also changing. And this changing may also affect the output. And it's not only by the conduct that you can basically reach your expected level, but it's also on how the system functions. And another element is if you want to have automatization of data collection and of adjustment of feedback, basically you need also to modify what is a qualitative phenomenon. Safety is qualitative, so it's something which is difficult to define per se, into a certain number of measures, of elements that you can measure. So you modify a quantitative phenomenon into a qualitative phenomenon, into a quantitative phenomenon. And it creates a lot of problems here about the relevance and the objective of the different data sets that you selected. Okay, feed-forward is something that most of the people are not very used to, but it's quite interesting because we are talking here on how we can anticipate the problem. And basically we have the same structure. Of course, feed-forward and feedback are not exclusive. They can work obviously together. But here I just focus on the feed-forward just for you to understand what I meant and why is it important to have this idea. Feed-forward is basically the capacity to study how a system is working within its environment. So it's being able to collect information from the environment, which can be any form of information. Natural environment, we are used, for example, for shipping to collect data from the weather forecast. So we are going to use this data in order to anticipate the problem. But we can also collect multiple sources of data from the environment, socioeconomic environment, political environment, in order to conduct better the system. So this is about the environment. And in addition to this, when we do feed-forward, when we're thinking feed-forward, we're thinking about the system itself, how the structure of the system is also affecting the output. So we integrate basically the functioning of the system before any kind of problem and trying to adjust accordingly the conduct. So the idea is very much to understand the environment of the system and also the system itself, how it works. Some will call it safety 2 in literature, it's more known as safety 2. So the idea to do this, how to do that, is basically keeping a constant dialogue between the system and its environments. So studying in a qualitative way, more than quantitative here, but mixing different types of data in order to have a good view of what's happening inside the system and outside the system, in the environment. And it requires a good cooperation of the persons which are working inside the system, which are basically the operators, if we consider the system as the ship. The idea is to ascertain the conditions of the system. What are the conditions in the system that makes that the system is working well, without risk, without problem, without safety problem? So we want to really identify how a system works well in order to be able to determine and to identify what are the elements or signals that can be the precursors or the evidence of a problem within the system and correct it before the system leads to an accident. So it's also identifying the different sources of disturbance outside and inside in order to be able to correct the system before the failures happen. So it's all the idea of being proactive. You remember before we're talking the feedback, it's after it's happening, we correct. And here's basically from the environment trying to predict what can be wrong. But for that you need to know the situation. You need to have a very good understanding of how the system works and what are the elements within the system. And it's why here you need to have, in addition to quantitative data, you need to have a good qualitative data, so a good analysis of what's happening. So the ultimate goal of feed-forward is basically to anticipate, to be proactive, to prepare yourself for the future, to share the same agenda between the different parts of the system. And when I say the system, the ship, everybody sharing the same agenda, but also making sure that the environment of the system is sharing the same agenda, that we are all working together, and I think I heard several times this week the idea of cooperation, enhanced cooperation, and this is all the idea here. When we talk about the socioeconomic environment, we are talking about the company, we are talking about the regulators, we are talking about the verifiers, we are talking about the ports, and how all together we can work for a betterment, is to be able also to acknowledge the complexity of the system. And not thinking that the conduct of a system is something which is super mechanical. We are talking about ships, which are socio-technical systems, and when there is a social dimension in any system, we enter in a complexity with an unpredictability, some unknown, and basically we have to manage this, and there is no other way. We have to understand there is a complexity, and instead of completely forgetting it, we have to keep it in our mind all the time and solve the problem and trying to address it. And of course, this is something which is always also questioning the system structure itself, how the system works. Who is inside? Who has been selected to work on the ship? What for? How many people, etc. So we have to understand the structure of the system and how it works and how to improve it. So the idea is very much with being proactive, but it's also being able to acknowledge this complexity of relationship. The complexity of the system itself, but the complexity of the environment of the system itself. So for that, it mobilized a lot of research capacities. And here we need to have also persons which are able to analyze the ships or any large system in a qualitative way and in a quantitative way in order to achieve the objective that you set. It's not only simplistic numbers that you will use as data sources here, it's a different source of numbers, but also different source of information, something that you qualify and not quantify. So you need this qualitative data approach and gathering at the beginning of it. And of course, quantitative and qualitative data participate in it. So I think I just give you a picture. It looks a little bit theoretical, I'm sorry, but I think it's important sometimes to set what we are doing and where we are going. And now I will come back to a very short thing and explain, look, I mean, if we want to have an appropriate feedback and appropriate feed forward in order to have a very good functioning of ships, in order to ensure that the expected level is the highest and is going to work, basically we need to have quality data and reliable data. And here I will talk about something now in my presentation, which is very much of where we are in shipping. From a theoretical point of view that I had now, I just go through more what's happening today. I mean, do we have reliable and quality data in shipping today about safety? I will talk about some difficulties that we have today. First of all, you see there is a lot of, it's mostly from the Lloyd's list, but there is also some other sources. And in the middle, you see what is written. Nearly 40% of very serious casualties do not result in a flag state investigation being published. And in the same quotation, you will see, even the ones published are not always of the expected quality. I know the problem of casualty investigation is basically the capacity of the industry to collect feedback from accidents and to react. So when we don't have post-accident data, basically we're already breaking the capacity, the very capacity to feed our feedback. And I know that the IMO has been pushing a lot in the recent past with the Secretary General, and especially the Secretary General is really pushing still, I think, today in trying to have more and more casualty investigation done, completed at high quality level, but it looks like it's difficult. It's moving slowly, it's improving, because, I mean, if you look at the past literature within the last 5-6 years, basically there have been a small improvement, we can say that, but still a lot are missing. And this small extract, you can see it was from about 1 month ago. Huh? So it shows basically that it was yesterday. There is another problem in shipping. There is the quality of what a lot of companies are using in order trying to improve. What is incident report and near-miss reporting. And here we have a lot of qualitative research which has been done in shipping and around shipping, which clearly highlights a problem. We cannot very much trust what's happening. We cannot very much trust incident reporting. We cannot very much trust near misses it's not very much reliable, and we have to take care of what we are using. Because, and here there is some explanation which have been done by some researcher, they said there is a gap. There is a gap between the ships and shore. There's a big gap, and there is a fear. And this gap is creating a misunderstanding, a mistrust. And this mistrust is having a lot of detrimental consequences on data providing to the company. And I heard, I think it was 2 days ago, and I think it was very interesting to have a CEO talking and explaining also there is also the role of education in the middle management. Because sometimes you have very good intention from the top management, but you have some layers in between from the ships and the top management intention, which are not always working well. And there is a lot of education here, a lot of understanding, mutual understanding to do in order to improve this quality of reporting. Here I'm talking near misses, but there are other things. Here is a problem of basic feedbacks on hours of work and hours of rest. There have been a lot of work done since 1990. In 1990, the first evidence of the big problem of fatigue in shipping has been just after the Exxon Valdez. The Exxon Valdez highlighted that the third mate that grounded the vessel had only 4 hours sleep and 1 or 2 hours nap during the last 24 hours. And it has been the beginning of the problem of fatigue. A lot of things have been done, but we still see a problem. We still see a problem not only related to the fatigue, but also to the recording of hours, according to STCW and MLC 2006, which are supposed to provide a feedback to the company about how to adjust it. But if these very basic records are adjusted, forged, in order to comply, there is always justification for that. Basically, we enter in a problem here. We enter in a problem of feedback mechanism. Do we really know how many hours people are working on board ships or not? Do we know it? Do we have a clear understanding of it? Everything that has been provided in the literature, in the scientific literature, tends to consider that there is a big problem here. And we are now trying to quantify it, and we are working with some researcher at WMU, try to quantify it. Our first evidence demonstrates that since the first quantification of the problem in 2006, we are about basically the same figures today. Nothing very much changed. There is some other problems. You see, at the beginning, I was highlighting the problem of the reporting of the data, reporting from the flag states, okay, with the casualty investigation. After it was about the seafarers. The lack of data quality from the seafarers. 2 different examples, near misses incidents and rest hours. Of course, there are many others, with just 2 selected ones. And now there is another problem. And here it's a more specific problem, is on container. On the container segment. We have a very big problem of data and data quality in the container segment. These are some of the examples. So you have an example from the IMO about the inspection of IMDG, showing that in average between 10 to 20 or 30%, I don't remember all the figures, of IMDG containers, declared IMDG containers, have a problem. And we know that there is only a very limited number of ports in the world which are doing a lot of inspections of IMDG containers. So this is also by itself a problem. We see that major accidents, everybody has the unmemorate engine, but we have also in Bangladesh during early this year. We have in many places, we have chemical spills, we have a lot of problems related to containers and mismanagement of containers, a lack of quality of data of what you transport really in the container. And of course, we all know the problem of fires in container ship. But it's happening on container ships, it's happening in ports, and it's a very major problem. And last week, there was an interview, a part of the interview of Captain Rahul Khanna from Allianz Global Corporate, and this is what he was declaring. I just let you reading it by yourself. I think it's quite interesting. After that, I just made a small calculation. 5% of containers may contain undeclared, may consist of undeclared dangerous goods. 5%. 5%. So I made a very small calculation, 4,000 TEU container ship. You have 200 containers on board that certainly, most probably, or may consist of undeclared containers. 200. On a 20,000 TEU ship, you have up to 1,000 containers. And I just made, after doing that, I had the information about how MPA, how many containers MPA is doing, and I made a rough calculation, very rough. We're talking about 3 million containers passing every year in Singapore that may have undeclared entries, 3 million. So this is what we have the magnitude of the problem. Is it new? No, it's not new. Here I give you on the screen on the left side, this is a paper I wrote in 2013 and highlighting this problem, 2013, it's 9 years ago only, and it's still going on. How can we have any form of risk management without a data quality? And here, in the container business, I think it's very serious. It's very, very serious. So in consequence, when we have this level of questions about the data quality in the shipping industry from everywhere, I give you a few examples. It's not one segment. We have problem of flag states, seafarers, problem also of cargo. How can we have feedback mechanisms that works? If the data input is just like questionable, how can we have feedback working? I don't know. How can we have models? How can we model safety? How can we have risk analysis without this quality of data? So in order to discuss this problem, I've been engaged with some other partners in a project, an EU project, Safe Mode, very big project, with many partners, but I would just highlight the partners on the right, and you see that we partnered, the lead partners were Eurocontrol, Deep Blue, and WMU, and we worked together. Eurocontrol and Deep Blue are very big aviation specialists on human factors, and for Eurocontrol, you probably know this is the ATC in all Europe, so it's a very big organization, and we worked together. And of course, with the support of the industry, BIMCO, but also independent companies, CalMac, FastCat in the Philippines and CalMac in the UK, and also some different organizations, MCA, the United Coast Guard, EMSA, etc. OCIMF also, a very good partner. The idea was very much to discuss what's happening in shipping and to understand how the frontline operator can provide data better. How today the data and the quality of data is provided by seafarers, but not only, you will see, and how to improve the situation. And it was very interesting to work with aviation partners because they have another approach of the world. They have other views. At the beginning, it has been quite a lot of friction because we don't understand the same thing. From when you are pure maritime, you tend to see the world in a specific way. When you are pure aviation, another way. And you have always this temptation, especially from aviation, say, yes, we are the best, so we will explain you what is safety. You don't know anything. It's not happening like this. Everything is compromised. Aviation people have to understand that safety in shipping, and shipping in general, is not aviation. We don't have the same constraints. We don't have the same regulatory framework. We don't have the same elements, and it's completely different. But we learned a lot, and it was very interesting. And we came with an interesting work, and the idea was to identify the problems and propose a way forward. And we came with the idea of trying to push forward a kind of safety learning culture in shipping. This is not a perfect work because this is a study that we want very much and we're interested in developing with more partners. Here you see we had several shipping companies and trade organizations, but we would like to expand this discussion beyond what we've done. So this is what we assessed. And mostly we had interviews, and this is not the maritime people, and this was also very interesting. It's not maritime people, us, that were having the interviews with these maritime experts. It was the aviation people having interviews with the maritime expert. Of course, before we discuss, we establish vocabulary, I would say a kind of taxonomy to make sure that we understand each other, and they understand what the aviation people are talking about. And we investigate all these aspects, investigation, reporting, what keeps a vessel safe, and we try to understand what's happening here. And we arrived to a situation, what was necessary very much is we need to have a cultural framework change. And we need to have a culture which is facilitating reporting and learning. Because the idea of reporting is not just to report to put on your wall and after have a nice paper on the wall. It's not the purpose. The purpose is to learn and improve. And basically this is where we are. We have to think about how we can learn better, from the data that we have, and we can increase. So there is this report that we have submitted, this white paper, which is available online. And so the idea is very much and the conclusion of this paper is to say, okay, what we have to do? We have to choose learning over blaming. And you cannot have both. It's one or the other. It's mutually exclusive. If you blame people, you will have no learning. That's very clear. So stopping this learning culture, this blaming culture that we have in shipping, trying to understand what's happening, because we all benefit from learning. And it's only by learning that we can improve, we can better the situation of safety. And for that, if we want to learn from blame, we have to build trust. We have to build understanding in order to improve operational safety. We have also to obtain accurate and consistent understanding of the critical factors. And in order to have this understanding of the critical factors, the only person that can provide this information, the one which are working on ships, not the other ones. They are the one facing every day the danger. They are the one facing every day the difficulties of the operation, the challenges in cargo operation, and also in navigation. We have also to develop a systemic accident prevention strategy. This is very much here typical, I would say, aviation types of wording, but it's very interesting in aviation because they don't think anymore as the plane something isolated. The plane is part of a complex network of interaction. The plane is just one element, and if you want the plane to be safe, basically you have to ensure that the airport is safe, that every single player inside the airport is participating in this safety. So it's a game which is considering the ship within a bigger system, which is the shipping system. For us, it will be the ports, the legal authorities, the flag, etc., etc. So learning occurs basically at all levels, and it's very important to understand that learning is not only the seafarers which have to learn. We hear very often education, education, education. I'm in shipping for more than 32 years, and this is what I heard for 32 years. But is it only seafarers that needs to be educated? Probably not. We had just a recent discussion with the Rear Admiral, and he was saying how important it is also to have the management also understanding what's happening. I think this is elements which are very important. So in conclusion, what we need in shipping basically today is reliable data. We can always think about data. Data is just a word. Reliability of data, quality of data, meaningfulness of data, validity of data. They are very important. It's only when we have these basics that we can really move forward. And we have to focus on the realities and not a fiction of the reality. And we have to take care of very simple indicators. An indicator is just a reduction of the complexity of a phenomenon. And if you reduce too much the complexity of the phenomenon, you forget that behind these indicators, there is a complex phenomenon, and there is work realities. We have to support very much qualitative research to complement just numbering. We have to learn and not blaming. We have to build trust. And we talk cooperation, very important. We have to develop this systemic approach, which exists in aviation for a long time. So learning, it's everywhere, and it's very important to identify the problem before imposing solution. We cannot impose solutions, simple solution, let's say, more training for seafarers without identifying what is the source of the problem. Is it really the training, or is it something else? And what it could be if it's something else in the understanding. Training can do, but not all. And here this is just a trust loop, which is a kind of extract from a recent publication, which is saying, if you want to trust, you have to consider the people as solution. You have to focus on relationship, on trust, on psychological safety, on speaking up culture, very important, speaking up, being not afraid to speak, not afraid to be blamed if you report something which is not expected by the management of the ship or the management on shore. And from this, we can have a better data flow, a quality of data flow, and we can move forward. Thank you very much.